Today's video is about the Jack family who went missing from Prince George, British Columbia in 1989. If at any time during this video you think that you need to stop and take a break, please do so. On with the case. The Jack family were last heard from on August 2nd, 1989. They were a young First Nations family and members of the Cheslada Carrier Nation, living in Prince George, British Columbia. The family members were Ronald, known as Ronnie, age 26, Doreen Jack, 26, Russell Jack, age 9, and Ryan Jack, age 4. Prince George has a known history of violence against First Nations. Not much is known about Ronnie's upbringing. It is believed that he and Doreen shared similar experiences. Everything publicly known about Doreen comes from her sister Marlene Jack's testimony at the 2017 National Inquiry into MMIW in Smithers, BC. Marlene goes by the name Maria, which I will refer to her here on out. It should also be noted that when the disappearance first happened, Maria was instructed by the RCMP not to talk to media, or else they would stop talking to her about the case. She stayed silent for many decades. She met a very strong woman by the name of Gladys Radek, who helped her find the strength to speak up and tell her and Doreen's life story. It took about 45 minutes for Gladys to convince Maria to speak up. Maria was only 23 when her family disappeared. Just a side note on Gladys. I was not going to put this in the video because I did not want to take away any attention from the Jacks. But it is very important. Gladys's niece Tamara Chipman went missing along Highway 16 and is listed on the EPANA list for Highway of Tears victims. She has been a fierce advocate for the MMIW movement. She covers her car with pictures of the missing and has documented over 4,000 missing women. I hope I will get the pleasure of speaking with her one day. Maria shared that Doreen was the oldest sister. She is 3 years older. And that she had a younger sister named Maureen, 9 months younger. They grew up in an alcoholic household. Both her parents drank and often would fight. One day after a violent fight, their mother, Katie Paul, left and never came back. She ended up moving to Quesnel, BC. After this, the sisters were raised solely by their father, Charlie Jack, who continued to abuse alcohol. Their father would leave them alone or with babysitters when he was out drinking. While he was out partying, Maria stated that random men would come in the home looking for sex from the girls. Maria said that the earliest she can remember this happening to her was 4. She said that Doreen would protect her from the men by telling them to try with her instead. Their dad even shot at the girls once in a drunken rage. There was just a lot of alcohol, violence, and just really bad things going on. Sadly, these are typical things that go on in an alcoholic household. In the 1970s, the girls started going to Lee Jack Residential School, just outside Fraser Lake. They continued to go there until the school closed in 1976. When the school had breaks, they were sent home until it was time to come back. Unfortunately, these residential schools were just as bad as the homes some of these children would come from. Many were subject to emotional, physical, and sexual abuse at these schools. Maria said that the nuns would tell her how useless she was and that she should be ashamed her parents ever gave birth to her. This continued daily for almost 7 years. This type of treatment must have had long-lasting effects, possibly lifelong. Then the cycle just continues to churn away, generation after generation, affecting their children, their future families, and their future families. After residential school, the girls were sent to a separate school in Prince George. Doreen was raped at school and became pregnant with Russell. Their dad, Charlie, refused to let the girls come home. He was angry that Doreen was pregnant, but he later had a change of heart and let them move back. Soon after, in 1982, Charlie passed away. After this, Maria and Doreen hitchhiked with Russell to Quesnel and found their mother living in a motel. Sadly, Katie did not want nothing to do with them. She cussed the girls out and called them fucking bitches. Maria stayed in Quesnel and Doreen hitchhiked with Russell back to Burns Lake. Russell would have been about 2 to 3 years old at this time. This was the last time Maria saw Russell. After they split in Quesnel, Maria ended up on the east side of Vancouver and homeless. She fell into alcoholism and spoke of her many horrors at the 2017 National Inquiry of MMIW. She said that she was raped and beaten frequently by other homeless men. She eventually gathered the strength to pull herself up and out of despair. She only met little Ryan over the phone. She would phone Doreen often, 1 or 2 times a week. Maria was working at a pizza place and would phone on her days off or before work. In October 1989, her Aunt Laura called her and asked if she had seen her sister Doreen and her family. I am personally proud of Maria for speaking up publicly and sharing her life struggles. It certainly has to take a lot of courage to do this. I hope she can be an inspiration to others that are currently stuck in that lifestyle. Eventually, Ronnie and Doreen entered into a relationship and fell in love. They would have their son Ryan in 1985. Maria stated that there was abuse that she had witnessed, but that Doreen felt safe with Ronnie. And she found it kind of strange how normal Doreen thought physical abuse was. I guess by now this type of thing probably seemed normal to Doreen. She believes that the Jacks were on public assistance and didn't have much money. Maria said that one of her cousins had seen Doreen shoplift cough syrup for her kids at the store because she didn't have any money. It should also be noted that the family did not have a vehicle. This comes into play leading up to their disappearance. It was probably easier for them to live and find work in an urban area without a vehicle. Ronnie used to do odd jobs when he lived on his home reserve, but at the time they went missing, he seemed to be in between jobs. It would also be easier to get Russell to and from school. At the time they disappeared, they had been living in Prince George for about 1 year. I believe the neighborhood that they lived in had a strong population of First Nations people. I Google mapped the Jack residence and the pub and could see various First Nations people walking about the neighborhood. The family resided at 2116 Strathcona Avenue in Prince George, which is about 5 blocks from the First Leader pub. Ronnie was at the pub on August 1st, 1989. He probably went there to play pool with friends and have a few drinks, something he probably did numerous times. The pub was located at 1724 Strathcona Avenue and was described as a country western bar that can seat up to 100 people. It included 2 pool tables and a large screen TV. The hours at the time were 10 a.m. to midnight on weekdays and 11 a.m. to 1 a.m. on weekends. On this night, he had met a Caucasian male there and had offered him and Doreen jobs at the logging camp. This mysterious man is described as between 6 to 6 feet 5, between 200 and 275 pounds, age 35 to 40, hefty but not fat. I'm assuming this means muscular or husky, brown hair, mustache, and short beard. He was wearing a black cap, red checkered work shirt, faded blue jeans, blue jacket with Husqvarna written in orange letters, work boots with fringes. This description is based off Doreen and Maria's cousin Ted. He had dropped by the house around midnight and witnessed the family packing. He said that the Caucasian man was in the home waiting for them and his truck was parked out front. August 1st, 1989 was on a Tuesday and the pub would have closed at midnight. Perhaps the cousin stopped by after leaving there. In the Taken series, there was an episode on the Jacks. Sister Lorraine stated that she lived nearby and could see Doreen's apartment. She could see her going back and forth to the truck the night she disappeared. She did not know what was happening with the job situation or with the strange man. She wished she would have known and tried to stop them. Constable Judy Thomas is on the record in an article in the Prince George Citizen, dated February 14th, 2000, saying that the description of the suspect was deemed unreliable. It was based solely on the cousin's information. She never elaborated to why she thought this at the time, but it is the same description currently in use. Constable Thomas went on to say the unknown male may have just driven them somewhere. There is the possibility he may not be involved at all. She also said that the Vancouver RCMP lent a fresh set of eyes on the case. They pored over all the files, and their first suggestion was to create a new Crime Stoppers poster that focused solely on the family and not the suspect. In the same article, she said that they had identified and cleared a man who fit the description. I could not find any further info on this. The man was never officially listed as a suspect, so the name has never been released. I do wonder if anyone currently on the case has ever went back and took a second look at him. Cold cases with a lot of evidence like this often obtain the name of the killer in the boxes. This is why it is so important to go through cases again from the beginning. Cousin Ted stated that he heard the call Ronnie made to his mother and left shortly after. Between midnight, when he first showed up, to about 1:30 a.m., right before the Jacks left, was plenty of time to remember certain details of this man. It is stated that Ronnie was hired to buck logs, which is cutting de-limbed trees into logs. Doreen was to be the cook's helper at the camp kitchen. The man who hired Ronnie stated that there was a daycare at the job site so the kids could come too. It should be noted that logging camps do not have daycares. It was only brought up after they could not get a babysitter from the children. The risk of injury is too great for such a thing. And to me, it sounds like as if this man was making sure that Doreen would come along. It is unknown how long Ronnie and this man were talking about work. I could not find a timeline for the pup. The man eventually went home with Ronnie so that he could get the family packed up and ready to leave work. The man had told Ronnie that they have to leave that night to start work right away the next day. Seeing that the Jacks didn't have a car, they would have had to hitch a ride with this mysterious man. Even though the family was poor, Ronnie always made sure that they had a phone. This was the late 1980s, and most people had landline phones. Cell and car phones were not very common at this time. Ronnie was very close to his mother and would call her all the time. Phone records would confirm this. His family lived in the rural areas outside of Prince George. At 11:16 p.m., Ronnie called his brother in South Bank on their home reserve. He let him know what was going on and wanted to see if the kids could stay there while they worked. His brother could not watch the boys for that long. He then phoned his mother about 2 hours later in Burns Lake. He told his mother at this time that there was daycare at the work site and the whole family would be leaving. The Jacks left with this man at approximately 1:30 a.m. August 2nd, 1989, and were never seen or heard from again. It had taken approximately 2 hours for the family to pack up and get ready for their journey to the work site. I could kind of picture this man at the bar, buying Ronnie drinks and talking about work. This man seems like he was pretty determined to get Ronnie and his family to go. But why? He most certainly could have found other capable men without the attachments of wife and family to work. Ronnie told his family about the jobs and that they would be back in about 10 days. Russell was starting school soon and they would definitely be back. The job site was approximately 5 miles past Benesti in the Lake Cluclu area, approximately 25 miles from Prince George. The route would have been west down Highway 16. The highway is otherwise known as the Highway of Tears. Unfortunately, he never gave them the man's name. Little else is known about him. Witnesses have stated that he was driving a dark-colored 4x4 pickup truck. Ronnie was probably excited and eager to start work. They could probably use the money for bills, groceries, school clothes for Russell, probably even have enough money to buy a cheap car. Inspection of the residence looked as if they intended to return home. Just enough was taken to last a couple weeks. 2 weeks went by and the Jacks never returned home or called anyone. Ronnie's mother became concerned and started asking around about them. A missing persons report was filed on August 25, 1989. Having a family of 4 disappear was quite alarming. There is no record of a similar type of incident happening before or after in Canada. Compared to other missing Indigenous cases, the RCMP seemed to have initially investigated this case more than others. A suspect case was done fairly early. Perhaps it was due to a whole family going missing. There probably was pressure from the top to get some questions answered. They probably did not want to cause a public panic. Unfortunately, this case has remained stagnant for decades. I personally believe that if this was a Caucasian family, there would have been much more effort to resolve the case. There was a miscommunication about the Jacks being alive and well. This incident arises from the RCMP questioning a family member who thought they were talking of someone else. This obviously had an effect on the case in the early stages. I have researched many missing and murdered cases involving Indigenous persons of Canada. Many times, RCMP investigators fail to verify and confirm information they state as facts. There are 2 suspect sketches of the Caucasian man in the pub. They are dated February 19th, 1989 and June 20th, 1990 and are very similar. There have been numerous tips throughout the decades. There have been several presumed burial sites identified. The most recent search happened August 28th through August 30th, 2019. This was on the Stony Creek First Nation. Ground penetrating radar and heavy equipment was used. Nothing was found during the search. The earliest article I could find was from the Prince George Citizen dated August 30th, 1989 that talks about the family. It states that they have been missing for 4 weeks and that Ronnie contacted his dad saying that he would be gone for 8 days working. Inquiries were made to outline RCMP detachments with no results. His father reported him missing on August 25th, 1989. RCMP stated that they thought Ronnie found other employment. Quote, "It is possible he found further employment and hasn't bothered to phone home." End quote. Ronnie's mother, Mabel, and her husband, Stanley, also searched for the family after they disappeared. They would spend the entire summer in the bush looking for any sign. They also once went to a powwow in Alberta after hearing a rumor that the family would be there. They would deplete their savings and do it all over again. Mabel once said that she often dreamt of the family after they disappeared. Sometimes Ronnie would speak to her in the dream and tell her he was okay. Many native populations of the U.S. and Canada believe that dreaming of loved ones who have passed on is a good sign. It often brings them some comfort being able to see them in their dreams. It is a terrible feeling to miss someone who is never coming back. There was an anonymous tip phoned in on Sunday, January 28, 1996 at 8:33 a.m., first by phone, then by mail, which was passed on to investigators. The caller stated that the family was buried at Gordy's ranch. The call was muffled and the name of the ranch could not be stated without 100% certainty. A recording of the tape was also analyzed and it still could not be determined what the exact name of the ranch was. But if the tip was also by mail, why couldn't they say for certain what the name of the ranch was? It has been stated that the call was less than 10 seconds. The call was made to the Vanderhoof RCMP and forwarded to the Prince George RCMP. I'm assuming when there was no answer, it automatically forwards the call. Constable Strader and Wolfenden believe the tip was provided in good faith due to the caller's tone of voice. The verbiage they used indicated the caller was male. The call was traced to a home in Stony Creek. There was a party there that Saturday and continued into the next day. 40 minutes after the anonymous tip, Vanderhoof RCMP were called to the same house for a disturbance. Officers at the time did not know about the tip that was phoned in from the residents. A search warrant had to be obtained from BC Tel before the location of the call could be disclosed. I am sure that this took quite a bit of time from start to end. It is stated that between 6 and 9 people were at the party. RCMP had interviewed about half of them and didn't think that the caller was among them. They would still like to locate more people that were at the party to have them questioned. I personally think that this is a reliable tip from a guilty conscience. They seem to have been carrying this guilt around and saw a perfect opportunity to call in a tip without it being traced to them. They probably left right after they made the call. Perhaps alcohol gave them the courage to purge their conscience. Maria has been quoted as stating that the information is just too accurate to ignore. Pius Jack is Doreen and Maria's uncle and is also on the record stating that his daughter had phoned the Vanderhoof investigators and they told her that the family is buried between Vanderhoof and Stony Creek. There is a lone house or barn that they sent investigators to. He believes that they only looked around that area of the house or barn and not the fence line where the tip said that they were buried. He is hopeful that they will be able to send some people out there to look again. In July 2017, Pius also said that the health department sent him a new insurance card for the oldest boy, Russell. This had to be truly shocking seeing that it has been 30 years since he had disappeared. He told Maria and she made a few calls and was told that it was sent in error. It was a terrible mistake to say the least. In an article dated April 18, 1995, Ronnie told his mother about 3 to 4 months before their disappearance that he owed someone some money. His mom was able to send him a little bit of money. It is unsure if he just used this for household bills or if it was used to pay towards the debt. Doreen would often play bingo hoping to win some of the money to pay the debt. It is unknown if Ronnie was ever able to settle their debt or who he owed. When Ronnie last phoned his mother, one of the last things he told her was, "If I don't come back, come looking for me." These last words must certainly haunt Mabel. Was Ronnie willingly working to pay off the debt, or maybe he just had a gut feeling in his stomach that this wasn't right? Was the family a victim of poverty and despair? Did they feel that they had no other choice but to take a chance? Most of the info in this article was supplied by a First Nations graduate student from the University of Northern BC. They compiled a research paper about the family. They wished to remain anonymous. They had some really good inside information. Theories out there. The Jacks willingly disappeared. I do find this one a little hard to believe. They were a poor family and this would be hard to do with no money or resources. Ronnie was very close with his mother and called her almost daily. The children would also be middle-aged adults by now and would have probably recognized themselves from the publicity in recent years, or someone else would have recognized them. Number 2, There was a wreck on the way to the work camp. This one is plausible, seeing that Ronnie and the mystery man were drinking at the bar. The only problem is that there was never a white logger reported missing. If the logger had the authority to hire people, he most certainly would have been noticed if he went missing. If there was a wreck, the truck probably went off a very steep remote cliff. Wrecking in such an area would make the wreck hard to spot, but no wreckage has ever been found. Number 3. They were hired for illegal activity. Meth and marijuana operations have been around for a long time. I am unsure if they were any of these operations in the area in 1989. If there were, I highly doubt that the mysterious man would want to further complicate matters by bringing more people and children along. I also do not think Ronnie would willingly put his family in danger like this. Even if Ronnie and Doreen did not know until they got there, I do think that they would do what they had to make it home safely. Number 4, Ronnie killed his family. Some have speculated that Ronnie killed his family and fled, or also killed himself. I do not think this would have taken place. They looked very happy in pictures, and he loved his kids. Even though Russell was not his child, in their pictures, Russell can be seen standing close to Ronnie. He seemed very comfortable around him. They packed enough clothing and necessities for 2 weeks. Why would you take all those extra steps if that was your intent? Number 5. Or perhaps it was a trap for non-payment of the debt that was mentioned earlier. But then, why would you take the whole family? They could have easily just taken Ronnie and settled the matter without further complication. I might also add that dead men don't pay debts. Number 6. The jobs never existed and they were abducted and murdered. I do believe this is the most probable explanation. It is odd that the mystery man would say that they would have to leave in the middle of the night. Maybe he learned from talking to Ronnie that he did not have a car and was desperate for work. I think this man tried to make sure that Doreen would come along. He also offered her a job, and when he learned that she could not go because of the children, he said there was a daycare. It is extremely sickening that a human being can hunt and prey on a family like this. I can almost guarantee you that this is not his first or last murder. With that being said, I will not get into suspects in this video. I will follow up on this in the Highway of Tears video I have planned. I believe the suspect may be responsible for more murders along the highway. I should note that Bobby Jack Fowler is often mentioned as a suspect. He has never been linked, and I personally believed he targeted young, brown-haired Caucasian women in the 1970s along Highway 16. David Francis Picton, brother of Robert Picton, infamous pig farm killer, has also been mentioned. There is no evidence that he was in the area at the time. Involving the little boys is the work of the devil himself. It must be someone who has extreme anger towards Indigenous and First Nations people. The children did not have to be involved. It deeply saddens me that Ronnie and Doreen went through so much in life and most likely died a horrible way. All Doreen knew her whole life was hurt, pain, and suffering. She was trying to make a better life for her family and kids. She lived a very hard life. If they are no longer of this earth, I hope that they did not suffer or see one another being hurt. But there is always hope that maybe the children are still alive. Newly aged progressions of the family were released in September 2020. They were created by forensic artist named Samantha Steinberg from the Miami-Dade Police Department. The sketches took 3 weeks to create and released within a month. Maria pushed so hard to get these done. It was long overdue. In my opinion, these new age progressions should have been done years ago, at least for the children. It is unknown why investigators have never requested this before. It's kind of like they just assumed they were dead and never cared. Maria told me that the RCMP were not involved with the updated photos. RCMP said they only had one forensic artist in the whole country and did not make it a priority. 4 years ago, they eventually told her that they had an updated sketch but would not show it to her. Recently, EPANA said that they had the RCMP sketch, but Maria already had the new ones commissioned. RCMP then wanted to alter Samantha's sketch, but this was not allowed. Maria also stated that the RCMP told her at one time that she needs to forget about her family and move on, and that she will never get them back. She was quiet for so many years, but she has now found her strength. She will no longer remain silent, she will not forget, and she will continue to fight for answers. I chose this case as my first episode because, in my opinion, this case deserves the most publicity. How can a whole family disappear and really nobody has heard of this case? The two little boys being involved is horrifying. Who could do such a thing? Just because they are First Nations does not mean that they deserve less spotlight than to say a Caucasian family going missing. I really hope that the Jack family will be found, dead or alive. That is the most important right now. Then after that, the perpetrator of any crime done to them can be pursued. I could not talk about the Jack family and not follow up on the Highway of Tears. I will go over the official EPANA list and unofficial lists. There are way more victims on Highway 16 than they leave you to believe. The RCMP have set out a specified guideline on qualifying cases to make the list. So I am unsure why some women and girls do not make the list when they qualify, or how can obvious signs of foul play be labeled as an accident or natural causes. Perhaps they're making the list seem less alarming than it really is. That's all I have today. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel. Did you know the Jack family? Please share any memories of them that you have in the comment section. The Jack family is gone but not forgotten. We are all trying so hard to bring you home.